There are women writers on both sides of this debate. Or anyway, writers who are also women, which is what Margaret Atwood thinks we should be calling ourselves, WWAAW. Wow. One writer who fiercely rejects the women writer label is Nathalie Sarraute, who said, "When I write, I am neither man nor woman, nor dog nor cat." And Joyce Carol Oates rejects the whole idea of women's literature, saying, "I have no interest at all in what people speak of as women's literature. Have women a special sensibility? No. There are individuals uniquely talented and uniquely equipped to interpret the complex symbolism of the world, but they are certainly not determined by gender." The very idea is astonishing. So. Then again, there are those who warmly embrace the idea of a woman writer. As Toriel Moy points out, in the decade from the 1970s, mid-1970s, excuse me, to 1980s, women's writing was hugely popular and was often defined as writing by women, about women, for women. And for mainly women writers, this wave of interest in women's writing was absolute liberation. Finally, women writers were going to express their own passions and desires in writing, and finally, they would see their own passions and desires expressed on the page. For this, therefore, many women writers flourished during this period, and 40 years later still do. So in the feminist community, being a woman writer is still a valid and very dignified term, a very positive thing. For instance, at Inanna Publications, the Canadian feminist press, where 3 of us have published our work. So there are those who embrace the term woman writer, there are those who reject it, and then there are those who just bristle at it. For example, Margaret Atwood, who said, "Male writers may suffer strains on their single-minded dedication to their art for reasons of class or race or nationality, but so far no male writer is likely to be asked to sit on a panel addressing itself to the special problems of a male writer, or be expected to support another writer simply because he happens to be a man. Such things are asked of women writers all the time, and it makes them jumpy." Note that she says them, women as them, not us. Of course, there are other aspects to our identities besides being women. These are important, and we'll be talking about this as well. But continuing just again in terms of an introduction to our conversation on the topic of gender, it's striking to hear often lately when women say being a woman is not really that important anymore. It's no longer really an issue. And you hear that pretty often. Some people suggest that this derives from, at least partly from the fact that over the past few decades, many of us have been able to take much for granted as women, such as control over our bodies and reproduction. In the recent documentary about May Cohen, a pioneer in the Canadian women's health movement, she says that the perception that one's womanhood is not relevant is the result of thinking that the challenges to women's rights and autonomy have all been solved, which of course is not true. We're now in a time, as we all know, when a woman's right to an abortion is being rolled back in the United States, and there are forces in Canada that are trying to criminalize abortion and follow suit. Some American women have actually said that they think we are now at the beginning of the road towards the Handmaid's Tale. And in Iran, just to be not only North America focused, a wonderful and brave lawyer, Nasrin Sotoudeh, who's devoted her life to defending women who oppose compulsory hijab, was recently sentenced to 38 years in prison and 148 lashes. So the world is not perfectly set up for women at the moment. One last comment before we get to our conversation, again about discomfort with the label woman writer. According to Rachel Cusk, she thinks that this can often be related to shame associated with being part of an oppressed group. And she writes, "Oppression becomes a cause of shame. Women might cease to produce, quote, women's writing, not because they feel freer, but because they are ashamed, less certain of a general receptiveness, and even perhaps because they suspect they may be vilified. Superficially, women's situation today resembles equality, except that it occurs within the domination of masculine values. What today's woman has gained in personal freedom, she has lost in political caste. Hers is still the second sex, but she has earned the right to dissociate herself from it. So as you see, there's a lot tangled up in this concept of woman writer, and now let's begin to unravel it.